let's talk about the WWE sale, because if you don't know by now, Endeavour Group Holdings are purchasing WWE, and they have announced that the sale is expected to go through by the middle to end of next month, September. They've also announced, of course, that it's going to merge with UFC into one company called TKO Group Holdings. But in terms of content, they're not going to merge or anything like that. They're going to remain two separate entities. So don't expect any wild changes like that. But what will change? Well, firstly, if we base what's going to happen to WWE based off what they did to UFC, then we're likely going to see a lot more sponsorships. WWE is probably going to become a lot more profitable, start earning a lot more money. And yes, I mean, it's going to be a great time for the wrestling business. I imagine the popularity of WWE could well go up as well, because we know Endeavour are great at doing that. Now, Ari Emanuel did hint yesterday when talking about it that, cost savings was the exact phrase that he used, would be used immediately, which likely means cuts. Now, when we think of cuts in wrestling, we often think about talent cuts. Yes, there could be talent cuts. If we base it off UFC and what happened in UFC, there probably will be talent cuts. I know one thing that a lot of people have, talked about is potentially Legends contracts. Well, that's one thing which they got rid of in UFC. I'm going to be honest, I don't think the same thing is going to happen in WWE, because of how valuable the Legends are for them. They earn so much money off merchandise, so much money. And I don't have the exact figures for UFC Legends, but I imagine that they're not selling as much merchandise as a lot of the WWE guys are, because, of course, Undertaker, stuff like, Undertaker merch, NWO merch, it's all mainstream at the end of the day as well, right? It's something which has, been iconic through generations. So I don't think we'll see many legends get let go. As for talent, we're going to have to wait and see. However, what they also likely mean by that is perhaps people such as video editors, graphic designers. Some of them now work for UFC, some of them work from WWE. Now they're one company. Well, you could use the same for both. In reality, it's not quite that simple, as I know for a fact the design team is already being, overworked in WWE. So if you're now putting even more on them, or even more on the UFC designers, then hey, things, might get a little bit complicated, but we're going to have to wait and see. But unfortunately, my prediction is that is the way that it will go. Now, I'm going to pass it to Clark first of all, because Clark, I know you followed the Endeavour purchase of UFC, very closely at the time when it happened. So tell me your thoughts. What do you think will happen when Endeavour purchase WWE and merge it with the UFC to make TKO Group?
I mean, just like The Happening said, we'll see you in September on that one. This is pretty unpredictable. The way Endeavour took over the UFC with Dana White in charge at the time, things weren't exactly the same as Vince taking a leave of absence, right? Dana was there, and the UFC ran pretty standard out of the gates. While there were cuts and whatnot, it ran about the same at first, and then you saw the changes happen over time. I'm not saying I fear necessarily. Yeah, change is good at times, and we've seen the sponsorship matches creates revenue. As long as it's not a distraction from the wrestling, I have no problem with sponsors. It's kind of ridiculous from a business standpoint to even criticize that. And Absolutely. So I have no issue with that aspect, and I think we'll see more and more of it. Yes, that will be the first one we see. As far as the cutting legends and cutting different contracts, I think we might see some restructures as contracts maybe expire and whatnot. I don't think, to your point about merch sales, I don't think that the Undertaker is about to be on a list of cuts. I don't think that Stone Cold is about to be on a list of cuts, or The Rock, or any of those type of names. But I do think we'll see it in other areas, smaller areas, maybe shrink the creative team slightly, maybe shrink certain other departments, whether it be marketing or whatnot, down to a level that just enhances profitability. And that's kind of what Ari Emanuel implied as far as cost cutting in what he mentioned yesterday, as you brought up, right, Ben?
Yeah.
And so, I wish I had a clearer picture. The waters are muddy because Vince just had to take a leave.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
on top of the subpoena. So it's one of those things where it's like, I'm not entirely sure because we may see Ari Emanuel and Triple H for the foreseeable future out of the gates.
That would
And
certainly be very
and,
interesting.
and that would be an interesting dynamic to see how that works because, as far as we know, publicly speaking, Ari and Vince have a good relationship and know each other well. I don't know how well Ari Emanuel knows Triple H or Triple H knows Ari Emanuel. I'm sure they've met and had meetings and right, but
Yeah.
I don't necessarily know that they've considered the fact that it may be those two running the ship week to week creatively in
I
WWE.
mean,
Not
I'm
necessarily
going
that
to be
Ari's
honest here.
pitching, not that Ari would be pitching creative, but
Yeah.
he's going to have his eyes on the product, especially during the initial introduction post sale.
Yeah. I mean,
Um,
from what I understand, uh, Ari isn't too. I don't know if he is a wrestling fan or if he's not a wrestling fan, but I'll put it this way: Triple H, who's officially the head of creative, his boss is Nick Khan. Nick Khan's boss is Vince McMahon. Vince McMahon's boss is Ari Emanuel, right? So that's the way in which this kind of pyramid, it feels like,
yeah,
kind of is going. I get the feeling that Ari Emanuel is much more interested in the business side than even the on-screen product at times, because
Yeah, it's more about numbers.
I
Yeah.
think he's put three people, beneath him
I
in
hear
that.
that, but knowing Ari Emanuel's passion for the businesses that he's been a part of,
Yeah,
he dives in head first.
yeah,
That's his reputation, and so even if he's not a pro wrestling fan, even if he's not, he is not gonna miss a beat, right? I mean, the joke about Ari Emanuel is like he doesn't sleep, he waits, right?
yeah,
He's one of those guys that you can't give enough credit to what he's accomplished in business and law and as an agent
absolutely.
and running all of that. And so I don't see him being that hands off no matter what. Not that he's going to be directly involved in creative, but he's not going to be not watching is the point, I guess, that I would
Yeah.
make.
No, that's a very fair one. And the one thing which I want to briefly mention that you spoke about is, sponsorships being on the apron. A lot of wrestling fans are complaining about this, right? And I understand why it can seem a little bit distracting at first. But here's the thing, I've actually wondered why they've not done it in wrestling for quite a while now, because they've done it in football, or as you Americans call it, soccer, for years and years now on the outside of the pitch. Like pretty much my entire life, they've had the digital LED boards going around. So I've always been
Baseball,
shocked.
hockey, basketball,
NASCAR.
football,
Oh, okay. So the
NASCAR.
more than
Yeah, it's
I've
all
been
over.
shocked. I've been shocked that WWE haven't, caught on to this yet, because they've got perfect space around the apron. They're finally now doing it. Yes, it can be a little distracting, but the fact of the matter is you're going to get used to it, and it's going to earn them a lot of money. So I think it's going to be good for the business overall. But Chaos, give me your thoughts on this one.
I think I can't really say anything additional. I mean, you've pretty much said what you've all hit it on the head. I feel like most of the changes for especially at the beginning, is going to happen more behind the scenes than in front of it, because at the end of the day, there's no reason to change what's happening on screen, because business is booming.
It's booming.
Oh no, Chaos's internet's cut out again.
The
The return of the
great
internet
shot.
ghost. Well, Carter, do you want to
Okay.
try and predict what Chaos was going
Oh
to say?
gosh.
I'm not sure what he was gonna say, but I can say as a NASCAR
Yeah,
fan,
give your thoughts on it.
let me tell you something. The sponsorship thing, at first it's a little weird, and in the NBA, I know people were weird about like Bumble on the Lakers jerseys and stuff, but my opinion, the sponsorships greatly enhance the NASCAR experience. When I think of like Kyle Busch and M&M's and that M&M's car and the M&M's racing jacket, I wouldn't be too worried about it. But it can get overboard. Like you guys pulled me from the MMA world, so I'm a little more heavily in there. I know KSW in Poland, they will print the sponsors on the fighter's body. That would be a step too far for me in wrestling. I don't want to see that. But seeing like a Pepsi, on the apron or along the side, maybe it's more common in American sports, but anytime you watch like motocross or, any sort of motorsport, Formula One, even you'll see the Rolex banners on the side. So I think it's just a chance to make more money. The one criticism MMA fans may have of the sponsorship is that in the UFC, fighters can't control who sponsors them, which is sort of a control thing. And UFC is run very tight with Dana White. So that's something moving forward. I think it's going to be very, corporate. It's not going to be free and open like MMA was when it was first starting out. But
You're not gonna see Condom Depot on the trunks.
So what you're telling me, Carter, is that Finn Balor is going to come out with his next demon, face paint and all of that, and over his body he's going to have a McDonald's sponsor or something like that.
AT&T. It's got to be
Mountain Dew. Mountain Dew. Yes.
No, Monster.
Prime.
Ball.
But Chaos, you're back. What were you going to say?
Yeah, sorry about that. I don't know what's happening. I think my hamster died on the internet wheel. So yeah, I'm not sure what you guys caught, but basically, I don't think much is going to happen. Much is going to change on what we're going to see on screen, because like what they're doing right now is booming right now in terms of their SummerSlam was their most watched and most highest grossing SummerSlam of all time. WrestleMania last was one of the big, like if not the highest grossing pay-per-view. So I think if everything is good on screen, then I don't see much changes. I mean, they kind of teased of things kind of like sponsorships or maybe influences, like with Ronda Rousey with her attire on SummerSlam. I don't feel like that. I'll be very surprised if they're going to put sponsorships on wrestlers. I don't think wrestlers are going to take that. I don't think they're going to really follow through with that. I think there's definitely going to be. It can run the risk of it being very WrestleMania level of sponsorships, because that was really heavy for us being there, in my opinion.
Toast Crunch.
Snickers.
Toast Crunch, yeah, anyone. Yeah, definitely.
So many Snickers.
That was so many. Oh God. But yeah, I think it's gonna be very similar to how UFC was, where when this deal does go through, I think you're not gonna hear much changes, and then after a couple months, you're gonna be like, okay, there's gonna be comebacks internally. I'll be very surprised.
Why Finn Balor got a McDonald's icon on it? It's just...
Will Brock Lesnar though diss a beer sponsor? Is the question, just like in the
Oh, Bud Light. No. I'm
gonna go home and drink a Coors Light.
Yeah,
Bud Light won't pay me anything, and he pointed at the mat with the logo.
Bring back Death Clutch, definitely. Imagine they bring back Death Clutch. But yeah, I think it'll be. We ain't gonna see that much changes. I can't really add anything else. I agree with everyone's been saying, but yeah, we'll just have to wait and see. I'll be very surprised if there'll be wrestlers contracts cutbacks. That'll be very surprising to me. Yeah,
because the roster's thin as it is, But then again, I mean, the Way haven't appeared for ages on Raw, so I mean, who knows? I really hope there's not though.